that Tulsi Gabbard had an aunt who was recently murdered? And trust me, the weirdest part about this case is not the fact that you've never heard of it. With all the recent reporting around the cult that apparently she belongs to, I decided I was going to dig into her a little bit for fun. Not only is she a part of this cult, but her dad and her mother were teachers for the Science of Identity Foundation, listed as employees in the early 90s. So Tulsi Gabbard's father's sister was Caroline Gabbard, but on May 26, 2024, she was apparently murdered, supposedly by this prominent Samoan playwright named Sia Figiel. I'm so sorry. And guess what? During the trial in January of 2026, she was found dead in her cell. Yep, and it gets weirder, folks. This case have more twists and holes than a pretzel. So the way the story goes, that Sia drove to her friend's house the night of the murder and stayed the night, and then the next morning confessed that she had done something terrible. Now her friend, who was apparently also a doctor and a distant relative, said that she was fearing self-harm and asked if somebody was hurt. Sia admitted that her friend was no longer alive inside of her home. She refused to speak the name and said that she didn't deserve to say it, but then drove her car to her friend's place, as in the victim's car, and apparently confessed to the doctor that the victim had come over for lunch and a tense conversation escalated. Mind you, they were colleagues, friends, and Gabbard was her mentor. And the author described an overwhelming anger that swelled up until she blacked out, saying that the victim had been injured with a hammer. Apparently, even though she was a self-unaliving risk, she ultimately wanted to surrender. Sia then apparently was brought to the police station and turned herself in. Now here's where things get a little weird. Forensic pathologist said that she died from severe traumatic head injuries consistent with blunt force trauma, multiple skull fractures, defensive wounds on her arm. Now Sia's own lawyer was trying to get psychiatric assessments, but she was refusing. And she told the court during her trial that the devil persuaded her to commit these acts. Now Sia also declined name suppression, meaning that her name would have been kept out of the papers. I don't understand in this case how there would even be an argument for that unless there was some sort of victim right thing going on. She also refused to release mental health records and disclose past hospitalizations. Like, it seems to me like she wasn't even trying to help her own case. What's also really confusing is that even though she kind of confessed to it, she was initially arrested on manslaughter charges, but then the police upgraded the charge after finding incriminating evidence, including a small knife and a hammer. Yes, not only was she beaten with the hammer, but she was stabbed. So I'm very confused on A, why the initial charge wasn't murder, and B, what the murder weapons did to change it to a murder charge, you know? Like, she walked into that police station. I would also like to note at this point that 3 months later, to the day, Tulsi Gabbard publicly announced her endorsement of Donald Trump in 2024. When 10 years ago, this woman was endorsing Bernie Sanders. The timing is weird. I say this because I am suspicious for many reasons about this case, namely this one. A doctor different than the forensic pathologist confirmed that the body was in an advanced state of decomposition upon arrival at the National Hospital morgue. Well, according to the story, it was 24 hours before she confessed to this. An advanced decomp is usually 10 to 25 days after the death. This is the point where soft tissue starts to break down. Now, I know that environmental factors might be a consideration in that, but A, she was indoors, and B, it was 24 hours. If we go back and look at the witness's statements, she said that she blacked out after swelling up with anger and said that the victim had been injured with a hammer, no mention of a knife, and saying that the devil persuaded her to commit the acts makes me think of some MK Ultra shit. Let's not forget that she recently was accused of seizing MK Ultra documents, especially considering she had a history of bipolarism, so she is the kind of candidate that they look for. Now, she was on solitary confinement when she hung herself, and the Samoa police, of course, put out a statement saying that it was a self-unaliving probably, and no additional injuries were found. I'm very curious to see how she managed to do that in solitary confinement while on psychiatric watch. But the next day after the Samoa police made that statement, apparently the coroner urged that they had to stop turning her death into morbid public propaganda. And the coroner's office went through the courts to have the Samoa police take that down. Because apparently when it comes to self-unalivings, they only are allowed to publish something if the coroner approves it. And it wasn't just the police. They legally prohibited the media outlets from reporting on her specific manner of death. Now, what if I were to tell you that despite the case wrapping up in September of 2025, at the time of her death, there had still not been a verdict. And perhaps the reason there had been no verdict is because it came out during the trial that the murder weapons were missing from police custody. That's right, both the knife and the hammer were gone. The judge was doubting the prosecution's ability to meet evidentiary standards. Anybody else getting all the alarm bells going off?